I think if you're going to start a business, you have to go in with the attitude of, I'm willing to lose it all to a certain degree, right? Where am I willing to spend all of my savings? Yes. Am I willing to sell my cars? Am I willing to downgrade my house? And I just went in with that attitude of like, without risking my family, without kind of putting them into any sort of like, I was willing to go all the way down to the very end, um, in pursuit of like running a successful and building a successful business.
Gautam, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. If I can ask you to start, please, by introducing yourself and tell us what you do.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Nice to be here, firstly. Gautam, Rishi, co-founder, CEO of Oneshot.ai. We are a autonomous sales prospecting platform. So what that means is we will find your leads, use AI to create messaging, remove all the boring manual work that people hate doing, drive high value activities, so increase your pipeline, increase meetings. As a company, we've been going 2.5 years, the whole process from pre-seed to seed to just closing in on our kind of first million in revenue now. So yeah, excited to be here.
No, that's excellent. So I'm going to dig into the background because obviously we've known each other for a long time. I'm going to dig into that in more detail in a bit. But
You are my boss.
and who's doing better now, right?
Yeah.
So there we go. So look, what I love about your story is that you've gone from SDR to CEO. It doesn't happen very often. So I'd like to dig into your background a little bit and firstly understand, why did you go into sales?
Yeah, because I had no money. I finished university. I was broke, and it was the easiest. It was the easiest job you can possibly get when you finish university.
I loved managing salespeople that are always in debt. The best salespeople you can have, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, they found a good one with me then. I think I was on the. I just finished uni, Barclays. I think at university you're always allowed like an interest-free
Yeah.
overdraft. So I think mine was like, I don't know, £1,500. Somehow they kept on letting me go over it. So I managed to get mine up to like 6 grand of like debt when I finished uni.
Okay.
And then they put me on this debt management scheme. So I had to pay back like £300 a month. Plus I had no money. I'd finished uni. And then a friend of mine had gone through something called Pareto Law. So Pareto Law, like student grad thing, you go to an assessment day. Um, and I just needed a job.
Okay.
And so, and I didn't really, tech was there, but I didn't really think, oh, tech. And then went through the assessment day, was quite successful, passed the assessment day, and they're like, hey, we've got this job. It's a company called Empirics. They do web testing software. You can go work for them as an SDR or BDR at the time. I had no idea what it was, but I think it was paying £17,000 basic
Yeah.
and like an extra 5 grand in comp. So took the job. And like, quite honestly, just fell in love with tech, fell in love with sales from that day. Like I was always selling, I always had it in me, but yeah, went into it. We flew out to Boston the next day. So just finishing uni, going out to Boston. Yeah, I had just fell
That's
in love
quite
with it since,
impressive.
and I just loved it. I just loved it ever since. And then yeah, here I am 20 years later.
Wow. Interesting enough, you mentioned Pareto Law, so I've used them many times. So I never realised you were a graduate of Pareto Law, because I think what they do is fantastic, and I didn't realise they were doing it that long ago, actually. I'm not saying you're old or anything, but they did do a good job. And interesting enough, the VP of sales was badgering me yesterday to introduce to another VP of sales in North America, but whatever. So how did you... Talk me through your career in terms of SDR. So obviously you've gone SDR, salesperson, etc. So what did that career look like?
Yeah, I think just going back to the very beginning, like an SD. I think when I started in 2004, and you're a bit older than me, so you'll know this. The SDR function was just coming out, especially in
Yeah.
EMEA. So the concept was always you had your kind of old school salespeople with quotas, and this new concept of, hey, we can actually bring in these inside salespeople. They can do a lot of the lead follow up, cold calling, prospecting. So the role was just being
Yeah.
defined. I struggled, to be honest. Like when I first went into it, I tried to understand the technology too much. Like I thought, oh, I need to understand everything about web testing and the features. I remember downloading like a manual to read it, and obviously it was completely irrelevant. I just struggled. I struggled with cold calling. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't know how to pitch it. And so I found the first 3, 4 months just really, really hard. I remember my boss at the time even pulled my chair. He's like, "You're not confident enough on the phone." And so he's like, "I'm not allowed to make cold calls with a chair." So I had to stand up in the office.
That's
Yeah.
proper old school. I've seen that. I've seen that as recently as 5 years ago. You're not allowed
Yeah.
to sit
So
down until you made an appointment.
yeah, I'm thinking about bringing it back in actually. And then but then, as with everything, through failure, you learn, you understand, you repeat the task, you get better. And then I kind of stepped up really quickly. So then, as with sales, the more effort you put in, the better your results. And then started booking meetings. And then, luckily, like I say, luckily, a couple of the senior AEs left, and there was an opportunity to kind of move into an AE role. So I took it straight away. Moved into an AE role probably after a year. Same theme throughout my entire career. Sucked at it at first, terrible at it, like happy years, underqualified, didn't understand what a sales process looked
Yeah.
like. But again, through learning and failure, kind of picked it up. And then loved it. Stayed in sales, moved around, went to another company called DCS, which is document management, super small
Okay.
company. I didn't really enjoy it there. It just wasn't, nothing wrong with the company. It wasn't the right fit company for me. Um, and then after that, I've been selling for like 3, 4 years now, so I kind of knew a little bit. And then I went to 1E, which is obviously where I met
Yeah.
you. And yeah, it was the first kind of company I just really enjoyed. I was there for 4 years. Was a corporate account executive, went up to enterprise again, going through that transition from going from mid market to enterprise selling is a big jump. It's a different level of qualification. So again, I think there was about a year, and I was quite lucky. The company were patient with me during that year transition, um, and then that was it. And then that was kind of the end of my AE experience. At the end of that 4 years, I think I'd been an AE at this point for like 9 years. By the end of 1 year, I closed some large enterprise
Yeah.
deals, $500,000, $1 million plus deals. And then I moved to a company called CD Networks, which is a growth CDN provider. And I was like one of the first AEs in Europe, and we were quite lucky. And then my boss at the time said, "Hey, do you want to take over all of EMEA and grow out the sales team?"
Okay.
And obviously, like I was 29, I just thought, "Screw it, yeah, why not?" Um, really lucky experience. We grew from 1 million in revenue to 40 million in revenue in EMEA in three
Wow,
years.
that's impressive.
So yeah, built the entire team from me to about 50 of us. Got a huge office overlooking St. Paul's Cathedral. We just grew like crazy. And yeah, that was a great experience. Lots of like growth, lots of hiring for the first time. Unfortunately, letting go of a few people, hiring more
Sure.
people. But yeah, and then kind of never really looked back. And then built and scaled another 3 sales teams after that through quite significant growth. Moved out to the US. So my first boss at CD Network said, "Hey, do you want to come out to the US? I've just raised like 14 million." And we did that, built and scaled that out in San Francisco. That got acquired by a company called Cloudflare, who were
Yeah.
huge. And then came back, scaled another sales org. And then I thought, okay, I'm kind of like, I want to do it for myself now. I've done it for other people for the last 10 years. Um, and then that's where I started One Shot.
Okay.
And now we're
Well, I'm going to talk about that in more and more
building.
detail. I'm going to pause there for
Yeah,
a second because my dog's barking.
yeah,
So
yeah.
hold on
I
two
can hear
seconds,
you.
mate. Hold on. I want to ask you about your transition from AE to a sales leader, sales manager, because what I've always found in all my roles is that there's very little training, coaching, mentoring for someone going from an AE or account executive into a sales role, because organizations think great salesperson's going to make a great sales leader, but not always the case. So what's your experience of that? Did you get training on it, or were you just thrown and learning on the job?
Yeah, definitely thrown and learning on the job. I would always class myself as like a talented salesperson, but I would say like, I was compared to other people, I was probably a little bit lazy. So moving into a sales leadership, I was perfect because all sales managers are lazy. So it suited me really, really nicely. And so I again, same with anything, when you move to any new point in your career, added responsibility, doing something new. Like there's always a 1 to 2 year
Yeah.
transition. Um, I think there was definitely like a level of insecurity there for me. I was 29 at the time. I'd never
That's pretty
managed
young to be
anyone
doing
before.
that, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it probably would
and
have been easier earning good money as a sales guy rather than going to sales leadership.
yeah, and I thought that several times as well because then you get a little bump in base, so the bump in base is good, but then suddenly your entire team is earning more money than you,
Yeah.
but you're working 10x harder than your team because I was on every call, every demo.
Okay.
I was ramping, I was training. I just hired 10 AEs, 6 SDRs, 4 account managers. Everyone was reporting into me. So I think at one point I had 26 direct reports. And yeah, it's tough, right? Because you've got that insecure. Like people know I'm a first-time leader. People know I'm young. Maybe I'm a good sales guy, but am I a good
Yeah.
leader? There's a difference between those two things.
Yeah.
And um, I don't think I doubted myself because the results were there. So I think the results give you confidence. But I think I could pick it in a few members of the team. I remember there was a few instances where instead of coming to me, they would go to my boss's boss in the US. So it
Okay.
was kind of a bit of
Bit
like a
naughty.
tactical maneuver by them. But having a good leader in Jeff, who was my boss at the time, he kind of saw straight through it and just like speak with Gotham
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
like he just directed everything to me, not letting any of those. And which again, like that gave me the confidence having a leader and manager knowing that like this is the right person for the job. So yeah, after about a year is probably when I started getting into my stride.
Yeah.
The team had ramped, but for that first year, I think there was a lot of questions. Can I do it? Am I the right person for the role? Am I
You're talking
hiring
about
the
a bit of
right
imposter
people?
syndrome, Gotham, are we? Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. I think that was there for certain. But I just kind of got my head down. I think the only thing you can do in those
Yeah.
situations is focus on results, focus on performance. And then after 6 to 9 months, we became the fastest part of the business. We were signing, we were adding $1 million a month in new revenue.
Yeah.
The big market leader, we were beating on every deal. Yeah, it was good. It was good. We were basically breaking every record the company had for every
So
month.
why is that though? What would you put that down to? Obviously your leadership, right? Number one.
Obviously, my leadership and good looks, and
Or go with the
then
first one.
yeah,
But what else is it the process you enforce? Is it the way you manage the team, or is it just luck? You can be honest.
yeah. I think there's always all three of those. I think there's to to go through hypergrowth, to go through scale. There's no one individual reason. There's firstly you need a market that's coming towards you, and I think what we had at the time was a product that people needed and wanted. Like just at a high level, we were able to deliver web traffic inside of China. So what does that mean at a high level? It means that page load times would come from 30 seconds down to 2 seconds. So for all these like EMEA luxury branded goods, Burberry, Louis Vuitton, all these companies, these retailers who are looking to access this huge China
Yeah.
market, without us, they would just their website wouldn't work. So we had that huge influx of demand, and so one was the market came towards us for sure,
Yeah.
right? If that wasn't there, there's no way we would have had this success. Two, this is where we did control, which did make a difference. We were ultra aggressive on our outbound.
Okay.
We were like doing manual outbound before sequencing solutions were there.
Okay.
We knew we had like this huge opportunity. I hired a team of 10 AEs, 6 SDRs, and it was no one owned an account, no one owned a lead. So people were just prospecting
Wow.
like
Okay.
24/7, going after every single account they could go after. Every pipeline report that we ran, it was how much of your pipeline is self-generated. We were doing because we didn't have time. It was a team pipeline review, an hour every week. All the whole team would get into a small room, and it was that pressure of it wasn't a good deal unless you'd prospected it. If it was an inbound, it didn't count. Like
Yeah.
it was kind of
That's
that
that's
environment.
that's a tough ethos or team to manage like that because obviously times are a bit different now. People got lazy with these, like you talked about, these automated cadence and sequences and stuff, right? People got lazy, so that must have been really tough to manage. Because was there a big drop off in staffing as well? Because that's a tough day job.
It, we because I think I was young myself. I ended up hiring people younger than me, so they were kind of at a point in their career where um, they were just so. And I'm not saying like I'm 41 now. I'm not saying I'm not hungry because I'm
Yeah,
41, but I think they're hungry for that high activity. Could I do that level of activity now? Probably not.
yeah,
No, I think this was people who were making 50 calls a day. There was no sequencing. They were sending 5 to 6 emails per prospect manually over two
okay,
weeks. They were being highly personalized. It was a high activity game, but it got ultra competitive. One thing we did was we wouldn't let someone own an account or own an industry because that just made the entire territory lazy. So like, so instead of like you own these 50 accounts, Paul, or you own finance, what would typically happen is you would only work 5 of those accounts, or you would only work 2 accounts in the end, and you would wait for the inbound to come in. And be like, oh, that
yeah,
Barclays, that's mine, that's my lead.
yeah,
So you're effectively rewarding the most laziest. So what we had was complete open territory. Like anyone can go after any account. You can even have multiple reps going after the same account, as long as you're not going after the same lead. So what it created was this like absolute hunger and drive to be first in and get the meeting. And then once you got the meeting and the opportunity, then you own the account. But what it meant was everything was getting touched, like everything was getting touched. And we had tons of new meetings coming. And if you solve your top of funnel
yeah.
issue at every company, the rest like falls into place. Like, and there is no revenue problems if you solve that.
So I love that story, and I think that there's one UK reseller. I'm not going to name them, but they had a similar process where you start at one end of the office and you stood up until you made an appointment. But if you secured a deal in that account, that account was yours for the lifetime of your tenure in that organisation, and you just worked yourself up to the other end of the room where the big guys were, who were earning the big bucks and stuff. But I love the
Yeah.
idea of that. I really do. So look, I want to talk. I want
Yeah.
to talk about your. This is your first role as CEO. I'd like
Yeah.
to understand why you did it. Why transition from something where you've been multiple successful sales leadership tenures? Why would you want to go and be a CEO when there's so much risk? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah. I think with a lot of people who go into a sales career, people by nature who are in sales are entrepreneurial. Like you're not in sales unless you're entrepreneurial. So I think for like 80%, 90% of salespeople, they all want to start their own business. I don't think I've ever met a salesperson who doesn't want to
Yeah,
start their own business. I think 95% of them, just by nature, a salesperson is their own CEO of their own
yeah,
company by nature. So I've had that since that desire since I was a kid, like since washing cars, paper rounds, working at the golf courses. It was always this dream. It wasn't like I would love to start my own business. I'd love to have my own office. Um, and that was it since I was a kid. I've never actually, that was my only dream, to have my own business. And then you go into tech, and then tech is a very rewarding job.
yeah,
Sales is a very rewarding job. So you can get very comfortable with your base salaries and
yeah,
compensation and equity and expenses and like flying about business class. So you become very comfortable. And I think I got to, as I kept on moving companies, and these were great companies. I literally worked for great companies, great managers, great leaders, great product. I found myself getting increasingly frustrated with other people within the organization, the way the organizations were being run, or the hires that were being made. I just kept on thinking, oh, I could do this better. I could, and I just noticed it. Just, I was becoming a grumpy old man
okay.
at every single
Even at
role.
a young
Uh,
age.
yeah, I could see it. I kind of like. I think that was part of me thinking like I just needed to do my own
Yeah,
thing. Um, I could also see the next 20 years of my career. I could see VP of EMEA. I could see global CROs. I could see it, and I just thought I don't. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs. Those are like amazing $1 million a year plus jobs. And I just didn't want to do it. I wanted to do something for myself. I wanted to build product. I wanted to build my own GTM team. I want to I've scaled so many teams. I've seen I wanted to build my own commercial models, and I just had it in me. And I just kept on seeing that if I don't do it now, I got to 37, 38. If I don't do it now, will I realistically do it in 5 years, 10 years? No. I was fortunate. I had some savings. We had a great year. And so I thought, screw it. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. If it all goes wrong, I can go back into that career path I was on quite easily.
So in effect, there was risk there, but not as significant a risk where you're going to lose your house. But
no, I always thought I can lose all of my savings. And I even thought, speaking with anyone who's had a successful business, they've sold their houses. And I think if you're going to start a business, you have to go in with the attitude of, I'm willing to lose it all to a certain degree, where am I willing to spend all of my savings? Yes. Am I willing to sell my cars? Am I willing to downgrade my house? And I just went in with that attitude of without risking my family, without kind of putting them into any sort of I was willing to go all the way down to the very end, in pursuit of running a successful and building a successful.
Yeah. So interesting enough. So obviously I've spoken to a number of CEOs on this podcast, and all of them say success does not come without sacrifice. All of them. Now, don't get me wrong, everyone I've spoken to had the luxury of having a little bit of financial security behind them, which is good. But even so, actually finishing one job and thinking, do you know what, I'm going to go and do it on my own is a massive leap. And I don't think people appreciate it. I don't think they do. So how did the idea for Oneshot.ai come up? How did that happen?
Yeah. So, like I say, I think I'd scaled 4 sales teams at this point. CD Networks, Akamai, Newmob, CloudBees. 4 teams.
Yeah.
And I would say my thing was always pipeline, outbound prospecting, pipeline generation, top of funnel, and putting that accountability on the reps. Not an SDR, not any marketing. It was always, I'd go in. It was a blueprint. I could go into any company, and every rep, it's the same thing at every company. Reps will be like, I've got a pipeline for $3 million.
Yeah.
My pipeline is $7 million. I'm fine for the whole year. And then you'd actually interrogate their pipeline. And 80% of their pipeline was BS.
Yep.
They'd have opportunities that were 3 years old, opportunities they hadn't talked to anyone. They didn't understand the value prop. So the first thing I would do is destroy their pipeline. Really interrogate and qualify. And you would rip out 80% of their pipeline. Be like, right, okay.
So just for those not in tech sales that are watching this, right, this is common, very common. Not only that you pull it apart, but the fact that most pipelines are actually BS. But anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. And the best reps have a really clean. The best reps are almost over aggressive with qualifying out their pipeline. And they'll complain, my pipeline sucks. I've got 2 opportunities in, where you've got the other deals my pipeline's great. I've got 20 deals in my pipeline. It's good. I can guarantee 18 of them are just non-starters. They're dead deals. They're just in there for the sake of having some my life is great. I've got a great pipeline. I don't think they're doing it to fool anyone. I think they're just doing it because they don't realize that, and they're doing it to hold the account. So destroy the pipeline, stage 1. This is not as a leader. This is as an individual as well. If you're sat on a crap pipeline, look at opportunity age, look at how many contacts you have, look at the urgency, look at the 2-way communication. There's some basic things. So once you destroy a pipeline, you kind of realize, I'm screwed for the year. I'm screwed for the quarter. How do I solve this? One way you can immediately solve any pipeline issue is by prospecting, building a new pipeline, building it super quickly. It was a systematic approach every time. So if my pipeline, if I had a rep on $1 million quota, average deal size of 50K, you need 3x pipeline. You can kind of do the math and say, okay, you need 20 new opportunities, 30 new opportunities. How do I get that? And that sounds scary. How am I going to find 20 new opportunities? That's a lot. That's 2 a month. How do you get 2 a month? You just need 6 meetings a month. And then, potentially 4 of them will qualify out. 2 might be legit ops. How do you get 6 opportunities a month? You need to contact X many leads per day. That number is typically about 20 people. You need to probably be prospecting 20 people every single day. So now, if you look at that, 20 people a day, it's probably only an hour or two of prospecting.
Yeah.
But if you do that every single day, you will have an amazing pipeline. And so this is why I did with every company. I put that accountability on the reps and we create that same culture every single time. But there was challenges with that. It's like, how do I find 20 new people? How do I create good messaging? How do I find the right accounts? And after scaling this, in companies, well, can you do your talk in the US? Can you come out to the US and talk to our US sales team about what your team are doing? And I would do that, and they would all be pumped up. And then a month later, you'd see, and they hadn't done it. And so this whole process relied on almost micromanagement,
Like
weekly
constant
reviews.
reinforcement type stuff, it's just, but
Yeah,
that can be quite tiresome, especially as a manager.
it's tiresome. And then you got to remember, for an AE, they're also managing a pipeline, and they've also got end of quarter
Of
pressure. And
course.
then at the end of the day, if they're working like 100K, 200K deal, I want them laser focused on
Of
closing that
course.
100. I don't want them
Yeah.
like scrolling through LinkedIn, randomly adding people. So that's where the idea came about. Is actually, why don't we just remove all of the manual work of prospecting from AEs, from SDRs? We can identify the prospects better than a human can anyway, because we have access to the CRM data. We can see who their customers are, who their opportunities are. We can see who they're not speaking to. Then off the back of that, we can create the messaging. We can create personalized messaging. We were working with GPT-3 before ChatGPT blew up. So for 2 years, we've been building this messaging engine, and we've been seeing a higher than human response rate. So we were lucky because of ChatGPT, because without that, we could never have created the level of personalized message
Okay.
you can create today.
Okay.
So the business was always right account, right prospect, right message. The account is easy. Well, I say it's easy. It's, there's an engineering background, like what ICP, what industry, what tech stack they're using, employee size. There's a ton of things,
Yeah.
but it's solvable. And so we built this entire system to automate all of outbound, and we're doing a pretty good job of it. Like, our customers are happy, they're growing, but it's taken us 2 years to get here. Like,
And I've managed many SDR teams, small ones, very large SDR teams, automated email outbound, that sort of stuff. And even now, even today, even using ChatGPT, still not getting the level of engagement that we want, because people and systems realise it's an automated message. So how are you getting around that to make it super hyper personalised?
yeah. I think there's a number of things. I think outbound email is one part of outbound. Email has been hammered over the last 5 years.
Agreed.
I think average response rates at like 1%. They were like hovering between 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
Open rates were 60% plus. They're at like 20, 30% at the moment. Like during and post COVID, everyone just went like sequencing
Yeah.
crazy, and buyers have switched off, right? I think you can smell an automated email a mile
You
away,
can.
and you kind of switch off to it. So we look at it in a number of ways. Email is one channel, cold calling is another channel, LinkedIn is another channel, video is another channel, voice notes on LinkedIn, social selling. There's 6 or 7 or 8. You can go into like 10, 15 channels. Um, how do we solve that problem? So we identify who the right account is based on. So we start with an ICP. So even before you get to the
Yeah.
message, how do you know you're contacting the right account? We've got a bunch of firmographics that will look at your existing customer base, and it will say, hey, you've sold to 20 finance companies. Here are their 50 competitors that are not actually in your CRM.
Yeah.
Those competitors are facing the same problems, right? Because that's how every industry works. So we find the accounts, we look for signals. Then, even before you get to the AI messaging, you can go into ChatGPT today and say, hey, write me this email, and it'll be pretty generic and rubbish. What you can then do is, the more information you feed AI, the better the output is. So if you feed it the information on their website, G2 reviews, Glassdoor reviews, company hirings, case studies, the more information you feed it, the better the output. So what we're doing is for every account, for every lead, we're doing. Imagine like, and this is where the name One Shot came about. Imagine if I told you, Paul, I'll give you $1 million, £1 million, if you get a meeting with the IT director at Barclays Bank.
Okay.
Call her Sarah Smith, right?
Yeah.
What you're not going to just put her into the same sequence you put everyone else into. You are going to spend probably 2 days
Yeah.
researching. You're going to understand everything about that account, everything about that person, and then you're going to come up with a really strategic way of trying to get in front of her. And that could be through network, through email, through cold calling, through social selling. So that's what One Shot does. It does all of that manual research and then produces the personalization based on real world results that are working today. So I know a VP prefers this style of message, an intern at a startup. So it's using all of that
Yeah.
research with AI to produce almost messaging with the highest likelihood of return.
Love it. That's a really good explanation as to what you do. Really is, and I think it's such a challenge at the moment where everybody is outbound on email, and I think LinkedIn connections aren't working. I love the fact you talked about video and social selling. I've been a massive fan of video, and I implemented that 3 companies ago, where SDRs were doing videos and voice messages for people, and it was working. But I think since COVID, people just become numb to that automated rubbish that goes through. So cool. So pre-seed funding done, seed funding done. What's next for One Shot AI?
Yeah, so we're driving towards over $1 million in revenue this year. We're aiming somewhere between 1.5 million to 2 million this year. That's been super fast growth from where we were, and that like how we've got there has been 2 years of just like testing, experimenting, validating, and failure. So
Yep.
we've come here organically. Um, we're trying to solve a big problem. So where are we heading next? Is we've got the product in really good shape. We've got our marketing is building, our customers are building. Now we're at that point where our customers are referring us to other
Okay.
customers, which is like
That's where you want to
so
be, right?
that was months ago. Our customers would be like shouting at us, like you said this and this and do this. so,
Yeah. Okay.
so we're at the other end of the spectrum now. So now it's about scaling. I think we are solving a huge problem, which is outbound, which is pipeline, which is revenue generation, reducing costs, increasing meetings. So the problem is huge, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? The old tech out there is legacy. So the existing sequencing tools are completely pointless. It's basically I'm relying on a human to spam people. That's how every sequencing tool works. So it's like, hey,
I
here's
can't
a
believe you've called
tool.
the sequencing tools legacy. That's
Yeah,
towards the end of my
yeah,
career, that stuff. So how old am I? You
yeah.
know, that's funny.
Yeah, it's basically like giving someone, here's some automated email
Yeah.
infrastructure, go send them 20 emails. And then find your own leads, create your own messages. It's like, it's a redundant way of working.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
so for example, we have one SDR and he books 30 meetings a month. He does not add anyone to a sequence. He is not looking on any data providers for data. That's all done for him. He's doing 2 hours of cold calling a day and he's doing a ton of social selling. And all of that is so he's getting inbound plus leaving voice notes plus doing video. So he's actually doing high value tasks. He's a respected member of the team. I don't want him going to adding to cadence, adding. I think like yeah, that's why would you pay someone to do that task to add people like so. Yeah, so our business case is very much remove your sequencing, remove your data providers. We'll do a much better job of it, and you don't need to like pay people to just do a pointless, repetitive, manual task every single time. So we're scaling, we're growing. We're currently going through discussions for our Series A. So this year, we'll fingers crossed get that
Yeah.
done. But the focus right now is revenue. We've just hired a couple of salespeople. We're hiring customer success. We're hiring product people. Um, yeah, right now we're ahead of people, but we're not kidding ourselves, right? The barrier to the market is low. The world has gone AI
It
crazy.
has. It has.
Smart people going after this space. So for us, it's grow, but in a really good, sustainable way. Um, and that's it. It's growth, 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 but in a good, profitable, sustainable
That's
way.
interesting because obviously I've been through funding before, and the funding partners can often influence the way your business is run, and not always positively. So it all sounds good, but what would you say are the risks to your success right now? What's going to stop you in your tracks or hinder your success?
It's I think there's three parts to like a successful business. One is like product, right? Having a good product that people like.
Yep.
Then there's having the right GTM. So if you think about this in two ways, you can build the best product in the world, but if you suck at your GTM, you're not going to be able to distribute that
Yeah.
product. People aren't going to be able to buy that product. So you've effectively good product, bad GTM, you're going to fail. Good GTM, bad product, you can still be incredibly
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for us, it's how do we align GTM and product together to be hyper successful? We have a great product. We have a okay GTM at the moment. So I think that what our challenge is: how can we do a better job at GTM? How can we increase our brand awareness? How can we increase our deal size? Right now, we sell to 50 to 500 employee software companies. Yes, we have a value prop for larger companies, but that's not our focus today. Like named account selling, cross sell, upsell. How
Okay.
can we autonomously inbound leads? But if we start building too quickly, we move away from like our current success. So it's where this can go wrong is focus. Us not being able to execute, us focusing on the wrong
Yeah.
product problem, us building the wrong product. Um, Focusing on the wrong channels. Like marketing is super sexy. Everything's a great channel, right? Everything. Like TikTok's a great channel. We could spend 6 months building up TikTok to 100,000 followers, and we could all pat ourselves on the back. But is TikTok a good channel for
It's
us?
not.
Is
It's
a
not the
younger
right method for you.
persona?
No, of course it's not. But yeah.
Yeah, the idea of it's like, oh, we need to get into short form, we need to get into video
Okay.
content, user generated video. So the idea of it's brilliant, and you can see companies doing a great job of it. So for us, it's executing in the right way. It's Of course there's competition, but they'll always stick in your own lane, focus on what you can do. But for us, it's execution, failing and pivoting quickly. If we don't do that, that's where we'll struggle. Yeah, until we get to like above 20, 30 million in revenue, you're incredibly fragile as a business. So yeah, the goal is
Yeah.
building up a good system until we get there.
There's some acronyms you use there, which some people might know. GTM, as in go to market. So understanding how you go to market, who you're going to sell to, how you're going to sell to them, how you're going to get them, all that sort of stuff. Actually, you
Yeah.
talked about a sales blueprint earlier. I've written a sales blueprint, which I will share with you afterwards. So I would start selling it online, hopefully.
Yeah.
But ICP, your ideal customer profile. If you're really maniacally focused on the person you know needs the software is going to get the most value from it, then you're going to do well. And I know you will, Gautam. You've done
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about outside of work. So, what do you do to unwind? Because being a CEO as a startup is going to be crazy. So, what do you do outside of work?
Yeah. So on a personal level, my life's got even crazier because I've had two kids in the last two
I
years.
know I
So,
didn't know that until saw your post on LinkedIn 2 days ago.
yeah. So how to describe it? You've got kids. You've gone to part of it is incredibly challenging and frustrating, but then the other like 90% is just amazing and brilliant and just amazing to be part of and on an honor to be part of. Um, so I think we just got to our first daughter, Sienna. She's 2 years, 2 months now. So yeah, I like every weekend I will take her out, and you just completely switch off, right? I don't think about work for 1 second because we're in the park, we take her out, we'll go out, we'll do stuff as a family. Um, and it's the best form of like stress relief you can possibly have. So that's been brilliant. And weekends with her have been brilliant. The evenings have been brilliant. But now adding in a 5-week old baby, It's pure
Man,
havoc.
that's crazy.
It's
That's
hell.
crazy. You could have waited a year, surely.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
goodness
I
sake, come
know.
on.
I'm a believer in just like all in, go all in, and then it will sort
Yeah, yeah,
itself out.
okay.
And yeah, I think the second Ahana has added the complexity to everything in life, because my wife's exhausted from like the
Yeah.
feeding and the nights. I'm now like doing a lot more with Senna in the evenings. I've got calls with the US, so I've like given like my office door is just open, so she'll just be coming in and out. Her sleep routine's gone, so you could call it unwinding, is spending time with the kids, but the last 5 weeks have been the opposite of unwinding. Um, so yeah, but I love it. I think like it's just brilliant watching them grow. Sienna's like talking and yeah, giving us back loads of stick and stuff. But yeah, it's just brilliant to see their little personalities come out and like yeah, I'm absolutely like obsessed with them
Congratulations
basically.
on that, mate. I didn't know, but and also my neighbour's decided to cut his grass now, which I think is really nice of
Nice.
him. Which you can probably hear in the background now.
You didn't put it in his calendar. You should have put it in his calendar.
We were due to meet another time. There you go.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you try and walk 10,000 steps a day. What's that all about?
Um, just getting away from the office, getting away from the desk. I sometimes find I'll become really unproductive. Like an email that should take me 5 minutes to send, it's taking me like 30, 40 minutes to send. Like really small tasks, like just a basic follow up or getting pricing out, become really difficult just because I've sat in the same desk for like 4 or 5 hours. So, like, I'll try and always get a walk in every single day. It's incredibly good for like problem solving as well. Like I can find like within 30, 40 minutes my mood has increased. So like it's nice in this country in the summer when it's blue skies. Obviously during the winter it sucks. It's harder to get out. But yeah, I think you just have to do that, right? At minimum, get the steps in.
I agree, and I could we bought a dog just pre-COVID, and it's the best thing we ever did. One because it was cheaper before COVID, and they're more expensive now. But it means I get out for at least 20 minutes, sometimes an hour if I'm lucky at lunchtime,
Yeah.
depends on the schedule. But you're right, you just go insane because I'm sitting in an office in the bottom of my garden, and I'm here for
Yeah.
10 hours a day, and sometimes
Yeah.
it feels like I don't move. So I completely get that.
Yeah.
So look, I'm just going to finish up now. So, what advice would you give to someone that wants to follow the same career path of you or wants to be a CEO of a startup? What advice would you give?
Yeah. I'd say do it. Definitely. Like I'd say do it. I'd say just understand the planning and process that's going to, and whatever like the idea, whatever the passion is, just assume it's going to take 2 years from the start, minimum 2 years, right? So anything you sign up for, however good you are, however successful you've been in your career, like you can rip that up. It doesn't really count because when you build your company, you're going through product market fit, product issues, customer issues, feedback issues, validation issues. Like these are things that, like, unless you've done it before, these are all going to be for the first time. And if you're making that move, so allow for 2 years. That doesn't mean you're not crazy, you're not working with urgency. Like you absolutely are. So I would say, like, have that, if possible, have that like 18-month runway. You're gonna be paying yourself nothing pretty much for that period of time. So like I've all my savings are gone right over the last 2 years. Every single penny is gone. Um, so be prepared for that. Be prepared for the long hours. Be prepared for like you're gonna get kicked like pretty much every day for 2 years. So psychologically, just be prepared. That's the hardest
So
bit,
how do you keep your
right?
spirits up if you're being kicked down every day?
Um, the small wins, the small, really small incremental wins. I think you become numb to some of the failures because there's so many. There's literally so many failures. Like every single day, you wake up and someone will beat you up. Like at some point, something will go wrong with the
Yeah,
product. A customer will complain. You'll spend money on stuff you shouldn't have spent money
yeah.
on. Something bad will happen. Um, but you've almost got to disattach yourself, like understand why it's happened. So yeah, just mentally prepare yourself. Number two is, just work in really small steps. So don't think about your first million or 2 million in revenue. Just think about what's the first step that we need to achieve to be successful. Whether it's raising a pre-seed, coming up with a like an MVP product, finding a technical co-founder, just have one small target, just work to that, like metaxically, just focus on that one thing, ignore everything else until you like hit that next milestone. For us, it's like, we have revenue and product milestones, and we just ignore everything else around that, and just hyper focus. So those are probably the two things. Yeah, get ready for the pain. I would say it's worth it. I'm probably not at that side of it yet, but yeah,
Yeah, but you're going in the right direction though, so you can see light at the
yeah,
end of the
going in the
tunnel
right
now,
direction.
right? So the
Yeah,
risk was worth it. Do you think that anybody can be a good leader? Do you think?
I don't know. I'll probably say no. I think there's like, there's being a leader isn't just like giving direction. It's also like absorbing a lot from people within the organization. It's dealing with stress. It's protecting your team. There's a lot to it. It's not just like, hey, I'm vocal. I'm creating like great things for my team. I'm the best. No one's as good as me. It's like that's the small. There's multiple parts to it. I think, like from what I've seen, the best leaders I've worked with, they just have those natural leadership capabilities. Um, I've seen really good, talented people, great individual contributors, just not be great leaders. They're unbelievable ICs, but I think that's what they're good at, right? I always had the example of like, look at Lewis Hamilton, an unbelievable individual contributor, phenomenal race car
Yeah.
driver. Could he lead the entire team and manage? Like, probably not. Like, he is a phenomenal. You've got to be incredibly selfish. You've got to focus purely on yourself. So, yeah, I think leaders work in slightly different ways. So, yeah, I would say um, it, it's not even great being a leader. I think there's always
Yeah,
sometimes
it's
some
not always
people.
great being leader. I completely agree. Completely agree.
I think that people are like infatuated with like, I need to become a sales director. I need to become a VP. Actually, you can be a really high performing, highly paid individual contributor all the way through to retirement. And you can make like tons of money without the stress, without the pressure,
Yeah.
and you can have a much better life. So, um, leadership isn't necessarily better, I think.
That's an interesting point. I remember early on in my career as a salesperson, success for a salesperson was those that climbed the ranks. It wasn't the ones that, they were a 55-year-old salesperson. Oh, he's still sitting there in the corner. When in fact, he was probably earning more money than anyone else. So, right.
Yeah, I'm probably 10 times happier.
Exactly. And less stressed. And less stressed.
Yeah.
Two more questions for you.
Yeah.
First of all, are there any life-defining moments in your career that set you on a path? Sliding door moment. Do you think, good or bad?
There's probably a couple. It's funny actually going thinking of Pareto law.
I thought that might be one.
Yeah, this is 2004. Um, I had I had the assessment day. I think it was like on a Thursday. The assessment day was in Chiswick. Um, there's a half a day assessment day. You have to go. You have to like do all these group activities, and then at the end you have to do a 3 minute pitch to like the team and
Yeah.
like why pick me in a career in sales. Um, and I just come back. These are all excuses now, but I just come back from a week's like boys' holiday in like Greece. I wasn't in the best shape possible for the assessment day,
Okay.
and I would say I was below average. I think I've seen my score since. I'm quite good friends with some of the team, and it was below average. And in the 3 minute pitch, it was pretty poor. Like my three, why pick me in a career in sales? I don't. Yeah, it was a pretty poor pitch. And then Mark Glendon, who's a good friend of mine now, he was the VP there. He became the CEO of Freto Law
Okay.
as well. He's CRO at Egress now, really good guy. I shook his hand at the end, and it was I think I gave the worst, limpest handshake you can possibly give someone. And then he just said to me, "Oh, just for future, maybe just like you're a big guy, you're 6'4",
Yeah.
like do a proper handshake." And then I left the room. And then the door closed. And I just thought, and then I went back, knocked on the door. I said, "Actually, can I give that one more go?"
Yeah.
And then I gave him a proper
Yeah.
handshake. And then that was the point he actually decided to put me through. And then I got that job at Empirics and stuff. So if I didn't go back and like give an actual reasonable handshake, yeah, that would be one. And then moving companies. I think there was another point where I left 1E. I could have stayed there. I had a few deals in the pipeline, but I decided it was my time to leave. I joined CD Networks, and in my first month, I closed like a 300K deal, closed another deal in the next month, and I got that promotion to like VP of sales, and then the rest is history. So yeah, I think there's people who are like, yeah, those are probably, I would say, and there's probably thousands, right? But those are the two that stick out.
No, perfect. Lastly, do you have like an analogy or any advice or a quote that you live by that you could say? So there's one guy that who was on here before, Martin Mackay, and I think his was. If I'm always quoting, it's always better to tell the truth because you'll always remember what you said. Which I think was a really good one, especially when it comes to forecast meetings. But I'm stalling right to give you time to think about it, Gautam. That's what I'm doing. So anything that you live by, or any advice to any salesperson?
I always like, and it's a popular one that everyone's seen, but I don't know if you've ever watched that Steve Jobs speech he gave at Stanford University. I don't know if anyone hasn't seen it. It's like phenomenal video. It's on YouTube. I don't know, it's like 15 minutes long, but he talks about like his life lessons and stuff like that. And it's always that the point was is that you can't connect the dots moving forward. You can only connect them looking back. And that, like, I think going through like your career, starting a business,
that's deep.
Yeah, and I think like I have no idea what I'm doing. Right, we have no idea what they're doing. And now I look back. Oh, that's why I was trying to start a business when I was 13 years old. Oh, that's why I was doing a paid round. Or that's why I moved jobs. And you can kind of like, obviously looking back, you can connect the dots, but moving forward, you have no idea. Like in the present moment, you have no idea. So yeah, I always like that. I always think about that. Basically have faith. You're probably following a destiny that's already written for you. So yeah, stick with it and go for it.
Perfect. Gautam, been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Really appreciate it, and I wish you every success with Oneshot.ai. Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant, Paul. Good catching up, and we will have to grab a beer soon.
Yeah, definitely. Take care, mate. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.